for the welcome. Okay. Whenever you're up. How you doing, Dad? Good, man. Good, all right. What the hell?
Look at you. I'm Travis's dad.
Yeah, let me just. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Those in the lobby, if y'all want to let them know, we're about to start this incredible day of Health Fest, focus on cancer health. My name is Fred Luder. I'm honored to serve as a pastor here at Franklin Avenue Baptist Church. Been here 37 years, the only church I've ever pastored. Long, it's amazing. Chase, I started out as a street preacher in the Lower Ninth Ward, man, with 65 members, and God has blessed us to where we are right now. But I want to welcome you on behalf of Franklin Avenue Baptist Church, Ashton Health, Xavier, Health Estate, and Genetech, and all the partners of this event to just share with all of you the importance of great health. We believe in being healthy partners. We believe in supporting health initiatives, and Ashton has been a great partnership. A number of our members and leadership members of Ashton, and we are just always excited when they ask us to host events like this. My trust and pray that you'll be blessed by all the things that are happening on today, and that you will be challenged that all of us will do our best to be better persons as far as taking care of our health. God bless you, God keep you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Giving Thanks Health Fest. For those of you who are watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, and the church's website, good morning to you too, and thank you for being here today for this very important event. I'm Dr. Ebony Price Haywood, System Medical Director for the Healthy State Initiative at Ochsner Health. And this event is in collaboration with a number of partners, Ochsner Health, Xavier University, Franklin Avenue Baptist Church, as well as Genentech, our sponsor for the event today. I am going to be your mistress of ceremony, so you're going to see me all day. But before I get into the agenda for today, I would like to introduce a member of our Genentech team, Marlena Johnson, who is the Chief Diversity, is from the Chief Diversity Office, with the business office of Genentech. Sorry if I mispronounced. But if you can come up and say a few words about this event, the importance of it to Genentech, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haywood Price. Appreciate being here. So I'm Marlena Jackson. I am from the Chief Diversity Office, and thank you, and very honored to be in this space with all of you. To our community online, thank you for being here. And so I just have a few words. And so what I really wanted to share with you is that not only is it an honor, but it's like, here's the opportunity for me personally. I call it somewhat of my homecoming. So my family actually is from New Orleans. Although I'm Marlena Jackson, my grandmother was an Aubry. So we have some deep roots here in the community, so I feel like this is part of my homecoming, and I'm super happy to be here and honored to be here in the space with all of you. But when we think about Genentech and what is our diversity and inclusion mission, it's really about how are we leading and delivering scientific innovations that are able to drive better outcomes for our people, our patients, and for our community. And it's also about meeting our people where they are. And so when we think about that strategy that is integrated into our culture, into our business, this is just how we work. And it's important for us to be able to do that. And then just so that the community is aware that back in 2017, we actually launched the Advancing Inclusive Research initiative to help us deliver and diversify our clinical trials work. And then shortly thereafter, in 2021, we established the Advancing Inclusive Research Site Alliance that was founded by Genentech. And really the purpose of that was really to help us bring in those community partners so that we were able to meet folks where they are. And since that time, when we think about some of those key metrics, because it's about us holding ourselves accountable for the work and having the community do that as well. And so we have nearly doubled the size and the impact of advancing inclusive research sites. And then we actually have done 27 health equity symposia that span across 16 US states. In addition to that, we have invested over $40 million in health equity and diversity and STEM-related charitable giving. So I think there's so much more work to be done. I think this is just the beginning. And so I do want to acknowledge that while there's still more work for us to do, I think we cannot do this work alone. So it's important for us to have community and these partnerships, and really want to thank the Franklin Avenue Baptist Church for having us in this space. We want to thank all of the community partners that really, without all of you, that none of this is possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Marlena. All right, so for today, we have a number of panels and honorable guests who are here. We will today review and talk about survival, cancer survival, and all of our stories related to cancer, colorectal, breast, prostate, and lung. But today we're going to start with colorectal cancer. But before getting into our panel discussions, I think it's important, I've been asked often, why are we having this session today? Why did you decide to focus on cancer? And the best way that I can explain that to you is to tell my story, the same as I'm asking our cancer survivors to tell their stories today. I am from New Orleans, deep roots in Louisiana. I lost my father to cancer when I was 11 and he was 35. Diagnosed in May, passed away in November, and to this day, 40 years later, I have no idea what kind of cancer that was. His life impacted my journey as a physician. He's also impacted how I see life and my responsibility. And as a physician, having learned what I've learned, I've also seen on the other side, as a physician, some of the challenges that our community, especially Black and brown communities, have as it relates to cancer. Cancer is something that we battle every day. It is something that we can survive. But the word itself makes us very afraid, and we tend to run away from it and not talk about it. Not talking about it doesn't mean that we're not going to be impacted by it. We've all been impacted by it, and I suspect those who are listening in and who are here today in some form or fashion have been impacted by it. So this is about empowerment. This is about changing the story around cancer, that we can survive, that we will survive, that we deserve to survive, and that we are a blessed people. But part of that means we have to empower ourselves with knowledge. And so today we are bringing together the community to talk about our experiences with cancer, lessons that we have learned, things that we want to share with you. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're here today, if you're listening in today, you are a part of my family. And this is about giving information to you so that we can all have a long, healthy life. And again, it's about empowerment. And our way of empowering you is to give you that information and to flip the script and help us think about cancer in a different way and to be ahead of it instead of behind, okay? So, hope I was clear. Hope you're okay with me sharing my story, but I really think that's important. Thank you. So, our first panel this morning, we have a number of distinguished guests. So I'm going to introduce them and ask them to come up on stage. The first person I'm going to introduce is Dr. Wanda Robinson. She is the medical director for Ochsner's Community Health Centers, the closest of which is in New Orleans East, and she's here today to moderate our group. Welcome. Our next guest of honor, Nedra Hookfin. She is a native of New Orleans, flew in from Houston, Texas, just to be here with us today, and she is 2 years in remission. Welcome. We also have with us today a distinguished guest, Mr. and Mrs. Alva Dookie Chase of the famous Dookie Chase restaurant, and as of next month, married 50 years. Last but not least, we have Dr. Jonathan Mizrahi, medical oncologist at Ochsner Health, who focuses on gastrointestinal cancers. Welcome. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Robinson. Yes, oh, I have your mic, sorry.
Good morning. It's such an honor to be here and to serve as your moderator for the colon cancer survivor panel. I'm here with distinguished members of the community, and I was just asked to share a few reasons why this topic is very important to me. As a primary care physician, being on the front line, what I do every day is to convince patients to take the best care of themselves, and cancer screening is certainly a very important aspect of that care, or preventative care. On a personal note, I told Dr. Price she could not have picked a better topic for me to share from my own personal life. I've known several people that have been really close to me that have been touched by colon cancer. My stepfather was diagnosed with colon cancer. He's a survivor. Just this past year, a very dear neighbor and friend passed away from colon cancer. I've had several of my dear friends' parents to be diagnosed with colon cancer, one of which I was able to diagnose. And a dear brother in the faith, young male, who was very dear to me, passed away 2 years ago. So this is a very important topic for me personally. And so with that, I will like to start off with our cancer survivors. I'll start off with Ms. Nedra. Can you please share your personal story with the audience about your battle with cancer and some of the lessons learned?
Hi, my name is Nedra Hookfin, and I was diagnosed in 2021 with stage 3 rectal cancer. I found out because I was having a lot of bleeding. I went to the hospital several times, and they finally, when the bleeding started daily, every day, so they finally set me up with a colonoscopy. I went. The doctor I had was so excellent that when he went in, he saw it and he was like, well, ma'am, I deal with this a lot, so I know that it's cancer. I was like, okay, but God has me. And the next day I had to go, and they went in with the scope, and it was cancer. And they started right then with the treatment I was gonna get. I had 6 weeks of treatment. I had to do radiation Monday through Friday, and I rested on Saturday and Sunday. and I had infusions twice. One was in the beginning, the last was at the end of my treatment, and during the process, I had chemo pills. I had to take 2 or 3 pills twice a day. So I did that, and you have to make sure you intake a lot of fluids, eat the right things, get a lot of rest, because your body goes through so many changes, and you need to like feed the cancer and feed the treatment that you have for your body in order for you to withstand and be in good health and to just move on with it. So I finished with everything, and I've had three of the checkups, and I'm totally clean. They went in, they said that
That's awesome.
my tissues were normal. It's like I'd never had it. In the spot, they went further up, they went back. So I just have one more time to go, and I'm done. So God has blessed me, and you have to stay positive and, give God the praises, because he is majority of the reason how I got through it all with my family and friends, and just staying positive and eating right and just resting, because your body goes through so much trauma that you need rest also. And that's my story.
Thanks for sharing your story, Nedra. What would you say is one of the most important lessons you've learned from this experience?
To make sure when your body changes, to instantly go and get it checked. Because you never know if it's something to worry about or not. But if you go and get it checked, you can make sure, because say I had not went to get checked, it was already stage 3. So if I had prolonged it, it probably wouldn't have been able to be changed around for me. So the most important thing is to when you see changes in your body knows when something foreign is going on. So you go and get checked, so that if it is cancer, you can get the best treatment and treat it fast.
Yes, thank you. And I would say, as a primary care physician, a lot of cancers you may not have symptoms, and that's why screening is also very important, and a lot of people delay just routine screening. Yes, so with that, I'll turn to our other cancer survivor, Edgar Chase. Can you please share your personal story with the audience, and with your battle and lessons learned from your experience?
Well, my personal story begins with having a wife who was a partner and kept all of the notes whenever I went to the doctor, because I'm clueless generally about medicine. So I wanted to admit that in the beginning. You need to have a partner who keeps notes on everything the doctor says and will keep you going in the right direction. My wife is Alva Chase, and I'm so blessed to have her. I have a lot of other things going for me, but that is my highest blessing. So I wanted you to know that. I don't think I would be here but for her.
Yes.
I know my mother, Leah, says, I gave birth to you so you would be here. But anyway, you get to know a lot of people in life, and you don't really appreciate how valuable they are to you till you feel that you may be dying. And the one thing that you say is, please, God, don't let me die. And I could tell you that the Ochsner Hospital system has administrators, physicians, staffs, nurses, and many others that will be there for you regardless of your race, your creed, your ethnicity, your income level, your professional titles, your gender. They're going to watch out for you because their mission is health equity in health care and making sure that everybody in the community has access to quality health care. So my mother would say, pray, work hard, and do for others. At Ochsner, they do for all. So I'm happy to be on this panel, and my wife would answer any questions because I'm clueless as to what went on.
I was going to say, should I press it up? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I was married to, we've had cancer in our families, but I was fortunate to be married to someone, Edgar plus his mother passed away of cancer. And they're from the school, they don't want to know the bad news. You just, they say cancer, they say, well, you take care of it and Al will tell me what to do. It was June of 2022 when Dookie was also bleeding from the rectal that we said, I think it's time to get to the hospital and see what's going on. And so they did do tests, they did an MRI and all, and they discovered it was cancer. From there, we met great doctor, Ms. Rahi, and several other doctors, and Nia Brooks in the audience. We just had a team that was unbelievable. And I said, let's just keep records. And he had radiation, he had chemo pills, he had infusion, he had the little fanny pack with chemo that you would bring and have 48 hours and we'd have to have it. And I looked through all of my notes in the calendar. He received treatment from June through December of 2022. And we were all so excited that it was looking like, well, we got this, when they discovered another tumor on his kidney. And so we started back in January with the kidney. And in March, they did surgery to remove the tumor from his kidney. And so we've been going on, it looks like we were going to the hospital or having some kind of treatment for every month. And it was like, well, wait, let's just take a break in a minute. But when I look back, it was tough. And I remember the times when he was taking radiation and, you know, Dick is a former Marine and thought he was all tough. And one day I told him, I said, I think we could ride in that wheelchair to get, and he's, And so finally the Ochsner at Baptist have the wheelchairs like at the airport, the little sky chairs. And I said, ooh, this looks like fun, sit in that one. And he finally did that, and that was a blessing just to have that.
A humbling experience having cancer.
It is, it is. But we have been going almost every month or every other month, and on top of that, he did have AFib, so we had to have a cardioversion, so it's been a blessing to have. And I guess I had a little experience because I had ovarian cancer 7 years ago, and I survived, and we did okay. But it is important to get your family to know that you can survive cancer, because I had a brother that passed away in December of 2021 of prostate cancer. And at one time, I kept trying to convince him and my sister-in-law, I think you need to check this. And he kept saying, oh, no, and she didn't want to hear about it. And so after he passed, she called me about a month afterwards, and she said, you know, he did die of cancer. And I thought, well, we attempted to do it. And both our mothers passed away of cancer. My mother died of breast cancer, and Dookie's mother died of cervical cancer. And so now we tell families, look, it's health that you can get, and you can get cured just like Nedra and Dookie and myself. You just got to be on top of it and just hope for the best. And there's all sorts of treatments that's out there.
Yes. Well, you guys are such a beautiful couple, and it's beautiful to see how well you supported your husband during this ordeal, and how much how important family is when you have individuals dealing with cancer. Can you comment on some of the challenges you may have faced in the community in dealing with cancer?
I think the biggest challenge was that people, when they hear the word cancer, they just don't want to talk about it. Because even my sister-in-laws told me one time, they said, we didn't know y'all had cancer. And I, you know, we're telling it all the time. But I think people, it was such a frightening thing, because so long time ago, when you said the big C, the word, everybody thought, oh, you're not going to survive cancer. And now that you tell them, you say, you can survive. There's so much out there, so many types of treatment, and they give you a treatment plan, and you just have to hope for the best and do everything that you can to improve your health. We both have exercise every day. I walk and he rides the bike. We also get up in the morning, and I usually cut up 7 or 8 fruits every morning. And in the lunchtime, I do the vegetables, and then I let him pig out at the restaurant. After that, I can't control that after that. And he loves ice cream and cookies and goodies. And I thought, well, you can't have everything. But the biggest thing is to get not only your friends and family, but to say, check your health. And because I tell our sons, I say, what's the likelihood of both parents having cancer? What's the likelihood of both grandparents dying of cancer? So it's there. But you can take care of your health and make sure, get checkups and all, and just be there. So we usually try, even with the grandchildren now, we have older grandchildren. Our first granddaughter is 26, and so we say, you just have to make sure. You just have
Take care of yourself. Thank you so much. All right, so Dr. Moss Rahi, got that right?
Yes.
Any reflections on any of these survivors' story, and could you give us your recommendations for cancer prevention, early detection, and treatment?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me and putting this on. This is great, Dr. Price Haywood and Dr. Robinson. I appreciate it. And thank you, Nedra, for sharing your story. It was a beautiful story and articulated just what you've learned from it, what you went through just so well, and very powerful, and thank you. Obviously, Mr. and Mrs. Chase, we go way back now. So I think, I have, a lot of thoughts about, when I first, met Mr. and Mrs. Chase, I kind of told them what the plan would be. And, his story with what was also, a stage 3 rectal cancer, so very similar to Nedra's story, it's daunting, You look at someone and say, all right, this is what we're going to plan to do for you, and I'm going to lay out the next 6 months of your life. And it's going to be radiation Monday through Friday. It's going to be chemo pills. It's going to be infusions where you're going to wear this fanny pack home for 46 hours. And it's daunting. And there are side effects. And to be hit with that on that first day when you meet me, it's tough. But I'll say, I'm sure Nedra was this way too, though I didn't take care of her. But Mr. and Mrs. Chase were kind of the model patients where, Dookie would say, yeah, whatever you say, I'll do it. And Alva would write everything down so she wouldn't miss a beat. And we'd spend more time talking about what books we were reading rather than the treatment, because he really did so well. And I tell patients with rectal cancer, especially stage 2 or stage 3, that with this treatment that we now have, historically the model for rectal cancer was you would do a surgery, and then you would do some maybe radiation and then chemotherapy, or maybe some radiation first, then surgery. But all of that would leave patients, a lot of them, with a permanent colostomy. And, that means kind of having a bag that you have to wear potentially for the rest of your life, depending on where your cancer was. And with the current way we do the treatment and the current outcomes we have, you have at least a 30, upwards of maybe even 40% chance that you could have such a dramatic response to treatment. Sounds like, not knowing your case exactly, this is what you had too, where you don't need a surgery at all. And that's really remarkable for both your survival, but also your quality of life, surviving with and from this cancer. And fortunately, for both folks up here, they both achieved that amazing result. We're so happy. In terms of, what I would say in terms of prevention and kind of echo a lot of what you guys said, and I'm sure you see this, Dr. Robinson, a lot more than I do, because I see the back end of it, no pun intended, but is that, prevention starts with awareness. Being aware that, I had someone ask me at a health fair we did, maybe a year or two ago, can women get colorectal cancer? And, for me, it was like, well, it was a little bit of a startling question, but also kind of goes to show that, we're not doing a good enough job to making sure people are aware that everybody has a colon and a rectum. So it starts with awareness, education. I like to empower patients with all the information that they want to get. I'll answer any questions that they have, but getting to people before they get the diagnosis. Healthy lifestyles. So, that's kind of a vague term, but a lot of exercise, good diets. These things will not resolve your chances. They won't make your chances go to zero, but they help. and getting screened. And I think that's really the number one thing we can do, because you can live the healthiest lifestyle in the world, you can know all about cancer, and it can still happen. So if you get screened, and that's really, we say the gold standard would be a colonoscopy, now starting at 45, and just a quick note about that, it used to be 50. And what we're seeing is that more and more folks at younger ages are being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. I mean, I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many even 20, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds are coming into my clinic with this diagnosis, and it wasn't even on their radar. Like, how could I get colorectal cancer at such a young age? So, you know, I think folks shouldn't be afraid to look at their stool, talk about their stool, talk to their doctors, get plugged in with a primary care doctor, and then really start that screening at 45. I would say colonoscopy is the best. If you're not going to do a colonoscopy, we have other stool-based tests that you could do, but we really have a lot of options, so you can stay on top of it and give you the best chance to be cured if, God forbid, you do have this cancer.
Thanks for that. Can you speak a little bit about the difference in terms of the incidence of colon cancer in the African American population versus other populations, and why it's really important?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's you know, super important both for what we're doing here today and the community that we're in. So there is a higher prevalence of both a diagnosis, but perhaps at least as importantly, mortality from colorectal cancer in the African American population. You know, I think a lot of work has been done to figure out why that's the case, and it cannot all be explained by access to care. That I think is kind of the, you know, like, oh, maybe there's an access to care issue, that's why. But actually controlling for those factors, there's still a higher mortality risk for reasons I don't think we truly understand. So, you know, anecdotally, I can tell you a lot of my younger patients with the diagnosis of colorectal cancer are African American. And, you know, again, I don't want to make my scientific, you know, decisions and thoughts based on anecdotes, but it is a trend that we see. So I think further education and just, you know, I'll do another quick story here. We talked to a group, Kia, my physician assistant was there with me at Zulu. We went to their, the social club and kind of talked about colorectal cancer. And it was just, you know, a group of men in there, and one of the concerns was, hey, like, I don't want to have a camera stuck up my butt and get a colonoscopy. And I'm like, I get it, you know, but like, you're asleep, you're not going to feel it, and everybody does it, or everybody should do it. So, you know, I think, and it can save your life. So, you know, I think reducing some stigma and talking to your doctor, and just make it a more open conversation. This is a good thing to do, because it means you're taking care of your family, it means you're taking care of yourself, and I think empowering people to just feel more confident and comfortable, especially those who otherwise are, you know, a little bit less likely to get checked out, I think is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would say that it's very important that we share our stories like we're doing today, to let our family members know what diseases we do have and how important it is for them to be screened. It's very important that you know your family history. We stress a lot the family history. And so I think that's very important today. One take-home message, maybe in 30 seconds or less, would you say what would be your take-home message? I'll just text everybody quickly.
Sure, mine would be, you know, kind of what I echoed before, is that, you know, we all have risk of getting cancer, some more or less. I definitely know your family history. Get screened, live as healthy a lifestyle as possible, and just, you know, be comfortable sharing what changes you're experiencing in your body. Because if you're not comfortable and you're not, you know, and, you know, I know Dookie kind of said he didn't want to come forward right away, but I'm glad he did. I'm glad Alva told him it was time. You know, I think increasing that comfort level of saying, you know, it's time I get this checked out, or having, you know, primary care provider you're seeing on the regular, so you can say, you know, you mentioned I've lost 10 pounds and I wasn't meaning to. You know, that's going to raise a red flag when they see you, Dr. Robbins. Someone says that. So knowing your body, staying active, staying engaged, and then, of course, getting all the screening tests that, you know, your doctors are going to recommend.
Take a message.
I would say, don't let the word cancer scare you, because it's not a death sentence. People are surviving now. Don't be scared of it. Know your body. When your body changes, go get it checked so you can be on top of it. And then go through whatever the plans are. Don't be scared, because if you be scared, then you're not going to want to do it.
How about over here?
be open and receptive to how people respond. Not everybody's going to respond like you, because I'm the doom and gloom. I'd rather know everything. Give me the worst case scenario, and then I'll go from there. But not everybody wants to know that. And so if you know a person and you know this is like traumatic to them, just start with a little piece of, there's so much out there, they can treat it and all, because I always thought for myself, cancer is something that's here and it's in me and it's going to stay in me. It might be dormant, but it might come back or stuff. So I have to deal with it then that way. Some people like to say, no, they cured me, I'm fine, I'll never get it again. And I say, that's fine too. It's how you perceive and what you think. And so just be open and receptive that everybody's not going to view it the same way, but that there's so much out there that could help you to deal with it, and that's a plus.
How about you, Mr. Jackson?
I was the dean of business at Dillard University. Of course, they had a nursing school there. But I could tell you that I always worried about how expensive things were, and to start saving early for things that are foreseeable. I learned that word in law school, foreseeable. It's foreseeable that you will have some illness in your life. Now, my wife was provided a lot for me, and she had federal benefits with the health care insurance, so, but I think it must be very expensive. I don't know how people pay for this. So it's to have early screenings, because it could be a very costly disease.
Okay, so I think they have shared just about what I would have said. So with that, we're going to turn to the audience for questions. Any questions? I see a gentleman. No questions? How about here? Yeah. Polyps, he said if you've had cancer or polyps, yeah.
So your question was, if you've had polyps
And they removed them.
and you remove them on a colonoscopy, how soon should you get one later?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great question. So it kind of depends. I will say that a routine recommendation would be 3 to 5 years later, get your next one. So we kind of say if you have a colonoscopy that, again, that's like the gold standard. Let's say you have one at 45 and it's totally clean. You don't have any polyps. The next one you typically would get would be 10 years later, unless you have some other risk factor like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, something like that. Or if you have symptoms, obviously. But the next one would be 10 years later. If you do have polyps, and polyps, if you don't know, are kind of precancerous growths that you can see in the colon. And the good thing about a colonoscopy is you can actually remove those, right? So you're actually preventing cancer from coming, not just screening, because you're taking out the polyps that will otherwise eventually grow into cancer. And then they send those off to the laboratory in pathology to look at what type of polyps they are, and the majority of them are going to be precancerous. So if it is one of those precancerous ones, the usual recommendation is about 3 to 5 years later to have the next colonoscopy, just to make sure there aren't new ones growing back and seeing, if anything's changed since then. But great question.
With Crohn's disease, how likely are you to end up with colon cancer?
Oh, I didn't know where that question was coming from. I was like looking at it. With Crohn's disease, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but it is quite a bit higher. So with Crohn's disease, particularly if it's active, we have much better treatments now than we did 20 years ago. These biologic agents that can really tamp down the amount of inflammation. But any state of chronic inflammation, and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis are kind of the paradigms of having chronic inflammation in the colon and the rectum, and potentially other parts of the GI tract. The rate goes up a lot higher because of that chronic inflammation, the ability to turn into cancer. I don't want to misquote the exact number, but it's several times higher chance of getting colorectal cancer. So the frequency with which someone who has Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, so inflammatory bowel disease, they should be getting colonoscopies much more regularly, sometimes even every 2 to 3 years, rather than doing the 10 years apart recommendation. So that's probably the best I can answer that question without knowing the exact data. We have a couple questions back here.
Questions in the back?
Good morning. First of all, thank you all for giving this forum for us. But I often wonder, prevention would be the key to most of these problems that we're having right now. We eat our way into everything that we are doing right now. And my question would be why we as the society, big pharma, big food, the big league people don't encourage better eating habits so that we can prevent a lot of these chronic diseases that we are having. And I kind of know in the back of my head, trust me, I do. But we as a people have to take that initiation, because if we don't stop eating all the carbohydrates that turns into sugar, the glucose that turns into cancer, we are going to continue to have these problems. So can y'all speak on why the standard American diet is still the standard American diet, because it shouldn't be? That's what's causing all of our problems.
Well, I would like to get started by saying in the Marine Corps, we could not have what we used to call pogey bait. And pogey bait is snack foods. And I don't know if snack foods are a big contributor, how much sugar, but I used to go to the grocery store. I would never read a label on anything. I want that, I'm going to get that. But I think we have to be label readers when we shop and know what we're doing when we purchase foods.
Yeah, I mean, your point is a beautiful one. I mean, it's so important. It's about, I think, empowering, educating. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is that it's not always easy to get healthy foods, both financially, monetarily, geographically. You know, and there are a lot of obstacles to eating healthy. And a lot of those are that it's cheap to go to McDonald's and order a Big Mac and fries. And it's easy, it's quick. You know, for me to say, oh, well, let's just eat fresh fruits and vegetables every day. It's easy for me to say that when I say it to my patients, but it's like, is that realistic for every one of my patients? And I recognize it's not. So what can be done? I think that's a big overriding policy question of how we can make, you know, our schools healthier. We start at a young age, so our children aren't growing up to be addicted to sugar, and they're not having the expectation that, you know, that's just what I eat and that's what I'm going to eat for the rest of my life. It's a wonderful question that I probably is way above my pay grade, but I think needs to be answered if we're going to make some dents in these numbers.
Okay, well, our session is over. I know there are more questions. Maybe you can kind of continue the questions. We'll be in the back if you want to speak with any of the panel.
She wants us to take
One more? Oh, okay, we can take one more. All right. I was trying to be obedient to time. One more question?
Yes, I'd like to know about the difference between removing a polyps and cluster of polyps. If you have just one polyp, and then you may have in another section a cluster of polyps.
So removing one polyp versus a cluster of polyps?
Yeah, you know, what's the significance?
I think in terms of what is actually done technically speaking, I probably am not the best to comment on that because I don't do those procedures, but I would say the more polyps you have, so if you have, you know, 6 polyps on your scope, you know, you're going to be at somewhat higher risk than someone who has 1 polyp. If you think of it as a precancerous growth, obviously if you have more potential precancers, that's a higher risk that one of them over time or something down the line could develop into cancer. You know, in terms of logistically, it might be a little bit more challenging, but I don't know I'm the best to answer that. But certainly, you know, having more would be a higher risk and probably make that time to your next colonoscopy closer to 3 years rather than 5 years. You know, there are conditions where some people can have genetic conditions, or some people have hundreds of thousands of polyps, like familial FAP. I don't want to butcher what the acronym stands for. And that's a condition where those folks are at such high risk of getting colorectal cancer, they actually recommend to have a prophylactic, meaning before you even have any cancer, take the whole colon and rectum out. So we know that these are precancerous growths, so yeah, the more would be a higher risk.
My question is, what is the medical field doing today to educate younger people about colonoscopy? Because I was in my 50s before I even knew what one was. And I'm finding that even talking to young people now, they don't know a lot of things that are available to them. being part of the holistic health ministry here at this church, we have a lot of things that we try to introduce to people. We bring in a lot of medical people, but I'm not sure if it's reaching the younger generation.
Well, I guess I can answer that. I mean, I think this forum is one of the ways that we try to educate. I mean, I think as parents or as older patients, I think it's part of our responsibility to help educate the younger. I would say, you know, we do a lot of different screenings, at least at Ochsner Health, in the community, trying to get the word out, and definitely we could do more as far as educational outreach. But I think the church is a good place to start, because at church you're trusted. You trust the people that are there. I applaud Franklin for having a health ministry. So I think if you are a member of a church and you want to start a health ministry, I think that's a great thing to do. I think it's being able to trust the people who's giving you the information. And Ochsner, you know, is definitely trying to be a trusted partner in that. And so I think we just need to do more of these events. And I think as parents and older individuals, we need to talk to the young and explain to them how important it is to take care of their health while they're young. I think the young folks think that they're invincible. And I think they think it will not happen to me. And so I think we need to maybe be more vulnerable and share with them our struggles with our health and our family history. Sometimes the family history is like the best kept secret. You know, I think we need to have more open conversations about that. So I don't know if anybody else.
I was going to say, I usually tell the younger crew, my niece, nephews, and sons, and even grandchildren, I said, I know when you hear the word colonoscopy, you say you don't want that, but I say Cologuard. Let's just start with something simple. Ask your primary physician, could you have that test? And I say, that's an easy one, have that. And so they say, well, okay. I say, so you don't have to be frightened that you'd have to be put to sleep and have this. Just have the Cologuard test or any test that they can have.
Yeah, I thanks for mentioning that, Alba. I think the best screening test for any cancer, and particularly colorectal cancer, is the test someone will get, right? If you're not, I'd rather you say yes to Cologuard or a FIT test, you know, any stool-based test, 100 times over than no to colonoscopy every time, and that's all you're offered.
Yeah.
So absolutely, great point.
Okay, thanks for your participation, and thank you, panel members. Okay.
For those of you who are online, we are going to be back at 11:15. We're getting the next panel ready for you, but please be back at 11:15. Good morning and welcome. Welcome back, those of you who are online. We are going to get started with our next panel, but before we do that, I actually have to make a couple announcements for those of you who are here today. When you registered, you should have received a gray ticket. That's for your lunch. And then you also should have received a red ticket. The red ticket is for a raffle to give away a pair of tickets to the Pelican game. So you must be present in order to actually redeem your ticket. So that was the announcement I wanted to make sure I got out before I forgot. But let's start up with the next panel on breast cancer. We're going to introduce our speakers. This morning, our moderator is Deborah Grimes. She is the Chief Diversity Officer at Ochsner Health. Welcome. Next up, we have one of our guests of honor, Dr. Carol Henry, who's been in remission from cancer since 2015. Welcome. Yes. Got it? All right. Welcome. All right, next. And next, our next guest of honor is Mrs. Bridget Frick, who is a native of New Orleans, retired high school principal. Thank you for teaching our kids. Appreciate that. All right. Understood. And last but not least is Dr. Erica Broussard, our radiologist, and also, I must say, our champion leading multiple initiatives, bringing mammography out into the community. Welcome, Dr. Broussard. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Deb. Make sure everyone has a mic. You have a mic?
Thank you, Dr. Price Haywood, and good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you today. She had me at hello when she said this was a breast cancer survivor panel because I am a 13-year breast cancer survivor. And it was an interesting journey. I am a nurse by training, labor and delivery nurse, also a healthcare attorney, had worked in healthcare about 20 years on the provider side and as a healthcare administrator. But I was also a patient. And one of the things that I had committed to doing for over 30 years was a self-breast exam. I did that monthly for many, many years just as a protocol. And I had no idea that that practice that I had started so many years ago would save my life. Because I was like so many women, you know, I religiously go to my GYN appointments. I had started my mammograms. As a matter of fact, I had my annual mammogram 3 months prior to my diagnosis. So had I not been committed to doing self-breast exams, it would have been almost a year that I would have had a delayed diagnosis. And I share that with you because that is something you're in control of. You know, from about the time that we become a teenager, our breasts become a part of our body, right? And so we should get to know them very well because part of that observation then is you will be able to determine if something is different. And when I discovered that I had a lump in my breast, it was really, really good that I had a relationship with a primary care physician because that's generally your entry point. Because if you've never had breast cancer, you won't have an oncologist, you won't know what to do, but because you have a primary care physician, that is an easy entry point if you discover something. So what did I do? I felt the lump in my breast. I reached out to my primary care physician, and within 48 hours, I was in front of him, and he said to me, you know, whenever I have patients that have lumps in their breast, what I do is I always ask them if I can refer them to a breast surgeon. That breast surgeon then will probably do a biopsy. And I said, absolutely, you should treat me like anyone else. That's exactly what I wanted. So it was, I walked across the hall, I saw the breast surgeon, I had the lumpectomy, and it generally doesn't happen this quickly, but it just so happened, I knew the breast surgeon, it was on a Thursday. She was like, I really don't want you to have to worry about this over the weekend. So that day, I found out I had breast cancer. And the interesting thing about that is I didn't think anything about, I was by myself, it was a routine, I was in healthcare. In that moment though, when you're told you have breast cancer, you really don't have a whole lot of time to get to absorb it, because you have to start surviving that day. And I couldn't be in denial about it. I couldn't, you know, you can cry about it, but the next day, you're still gonna have breast cancer, right? So I just sort of leaned in, and I decided in that moment, I was not going to be Deborah the nurse. I was not going to be Deborah the healthcare attorney, the healthcare administrator. I was going to be the patient. And I told everyone around me, just treat me like you would every other patient. And we just sort of leaned into the process, and that day started my survivor journey. And I ended up being diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer, which is triple negative breast cancer. So because of the aggression of that cancer, I did 24 rounds of chemo. And the chemo was very successful with the type of cancer that I had, because I did my lumpectomy after the chemo so that I saw that I had a 100% cure rate from the chemo. And so then I had a lumpectomy. They went in and validated what they saw on the radiology reports, and yes, there was no cancer there. To make sure that I had the best outcome possible, I then had 37 rounds of radiation. And I share that with you because life didn't stop during all of that treatment. My husband is in the audience right there, Ernest Grimes Jr., so he can validate everything that I'm sharing with you. I missed one day of work during that entire time of all the chemo and the radiation. I took all of the meds they told me to take, and no, I did not feel wonderful, but I was surviving. Surviving doesn't mean that you feel wonderful with the treatment all the time, but the treatment was doable. And I came to church every Sunday. My children were little then, so I went to all the games. I was a band booster. I did all the normal activities in life, because one of the things my physicians shared with me is the people who have the best outcome are the people who do not let this diagnosis dictate your life. And once they shared that with me, I could kind of take a deep breath, and I decided that day I was going to try to do everything I could as normal of a way as I possibly could. Because my oncologist said, you're going to have cancer anyway, so you might as well go on this journey the easiest way for you. Now, he said some people, they decide they don't want to work, and that's totally fine. But for me, just maintaining that normal process just made those 9 months of treatment go much quicker. So I want to share that with you because a couple of key points from my story is that I want you to remember. The first thing is the ability to observe changes in your body. That is so important because it allows you to get into treatment quicker. The second thing is have a relationship with a primary care physician that you trust. That is so, so important. And then the third thing is to follow your doctor's instructions. You know, it is very normal to be fearful, but the doctors are your partners in this journey. And it starts with trust, and it starts with leaning in to that process. So thank you for allowing me to share my story, and I'm going to turn it over now to the other survivors. Let's start with Dr. Henry.
Good morning, and to God be the glory, for he has done great things, and I'm so thankful for being here with you this morning and able to share my story. My story starts, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our family dynamics. In our family, 3 brothers married 3 sisters. And there were Davises and they married Davises, no relations, but we were all double first cousins. So whatever diseases affected one bloodline affected the other. So we had a history of hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease and cancer. And I want you to know, sitting here today at 76 years old, I'm a survivor of all of those. So I am thankful today. My cancer, I call it my amazing cancer journey, started in 1998 when I went for a mammogram and I had to do a biopsy. I was terrified. You know, I didn't tell anybody. I went by myself, cried all the way. And at that time, it would take a couple of weeks for you to get your results. So I was doing a workshop at a school, and it was about women's health psychologically, physically, emotionally. So during that workshop, one of the presenters got up. She said, I'm going to play this song, and if you recognize it, I'll know how old you are. So she started playing the song by Sam Cooke that says, if I could touch the hem of your garment. There was a woman, you know, in the Bible days, and she had been sick, and if she just touched the hem of his garment, she would be made whole again. And during that presentation, I had a phone call to come to the office. It was my secretary. The nurse had called her. And the nurse would not tell her anything. The nurse called to tell me that my results of my biopsy were negative. So I went back in the workshop, and I was telling them, I got a testimony. I got a praise report. And I shared that with everybody in the room. So as my journey continued, I had fibrous tumors in my breast, you know, all along the way. So in October of 2014, I got a call from my doctor saying that they had found a lump. I was driving, you know what I'm saying? He said, are you ready to talk? And I said, yeah. And he told me, and I said, okay. I said, okay, Lord, I ain't ready. I just want you to know I ain't ready. But if it's your will, it must be done. So I asked God, I said, look, you don't have to move the mountain. Just give me the strength to climb the mountain, and I'll be okay. So my journey started then when I went to my surgeon. I had a small lump, and it was aggressive. And I said, when can we start our treatment or have surgery? She said, the next week. I said, let's go. If Jesus go with me, I'll go. I'm not afraid. I told my daughter, I have one daughter, my husband, I said, we not doing no crying. This is not about dying. This is about living. We ain't having no pity party. So I went through the process, and each time I went through the process, it was something else. My journey was a spiritual journey. For me, it was totally spiritual. Every step of the way, everything that I had to have done, God was with me. And so they told me I needed to have an angiogram because something was going on with my heart? And I said, ain't nothing wrong with my heart. So I went on anyway, and I got up that morning, and I went in that room. I started singing, Jesus, 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 healer, healer, healer. And I went in there praying, and I tell you, when the test was over, they came back and they told me it was a false positive. So I said, thank you, Jesus. I had 4 rounds of chemo and 6 weeks of radiation where I was severely burned. I want you to know I call it my amazing cancer journey because during all of this, I was never nauseated. I was never sick. I was tired. I was fatigued. But my cancer journey was an amazing journey. And I sit here to tell you today, no tests, no testimony. And I believe that once God heals you, you are supposed to be able to share your testimony with others. So with that being said, I had my girlfriend to drop me off. She said, I'm going to take you to lunch, to dinner rather. And so I said, well, I'm going to go in CVS. I know everybody in that pharmacist, and I'm going to drop off my prescription, but you just wait. So she waited in the car. I went in, and the pharmacist, he was getting on my nerves because he kept saying, I'll be with you in a minute, ma'am. I'll be with you in a minute, ma'am. I said, why is he taking all these people in front of me? By that time, I had gotten arrogant, mad, all of these different things you go through. So finally, when he came to the portal, and he said, how are you? And I said, I'm fine. He said, well, I'm praying for you. He said, God's going to heal you. He's going to restore you fully and completely. He said, do you believe that? I'm looking at this man like, where are you coming from? But the tears start coming. My girlfriend came. She said, what's taking you so long? And I start telling her the story. So I told the pharmacist, I'll be back tomorrow after church. He said, no, ma'am. You're going to get your prescription in 5 minutes. So he did. We went to lunch. And that Thursday, following that Saturday, I had to go to my oncologist, Dr. Tama. And he was sitting with his arms crossed and his legs crossed, and he was smiling. And he said, you're good. He said, I want you to continue your treatment, but you're good. So I decided to go back to CVS Pharmacy in Chateau in Kenner, and I wanted to know who this pharmacist was that had prayed for me. And they were looking at me like I'm crazy. They said, oh, no, he doesn't work here. He was a floater. He was a floater, so just a testimony of how good God is. All the time, he was a floater. So that following week, I was speaking at a church about a Hatitude program with women with their hair and the weaves and how we like to do our hair. And so I went to speak, and my topic was women wearing their crowns to glorify God. So I did my little speech at the church, and it was all good, and I thought I was cute with my hair and my hat and all this stuff. And as I was coming back, prior to that, I was going to church that morning, and I had this epiphany about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a fiery furnace. I said, well, Lord, what does this mean? And something said to me, you're going to go through the fire, but you're not going to get burned. And after my speech at church that evening, I came home, took off my little pretty hat and all this kind of stuff. All of my hair came out. I was bald-headed at one time. But you know what? Going through the fire, not getting burned. I was already prepared. The Lord had already prepared me for what I was going to be encountering. So I'm telling you my story today because family is important. You should know your family history, what is going through. I had a niece that died of breast cancer. My sister-in-law died of colon cancer, and my sister died of breast cancer. And all this is tied in with this family history of, like I said, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a controlled diabetes survivor, and I sit here today with a defibrillator. And I haven't had one shock in 7 years. So I am doing well, and I am just so thankful. And like I say, my cancer journey is an amazing journey. I went to church, I was the announcer, and something was telling me, you should tell your story. And I said, no. Then something kept saying, you ought to get up and tell the church. And something was saying, no. So I looked like something just picked me up. And I told the church that Sunday morning that I had a testimony. I told them about my journey and how I praise God for his grace and his mercy and his healing and his favor and his protection. And the church was quiet, but at the end of the service, there were women lined up, thanking me for sharing my testimony and asking me questions. So my last thing that I have to say to you, God is good. I give him all the glory. The doctors I thank him for the doctors who performed the surgery, for the chemo and everything. But God is my protector. He's my healer. You know, he's my all in all. And he does it for me, and I'm sure that he did it for every other survivor. And I just want to thank him and thank you all for listening at my testimony this morning.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful survivor story. And thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so our second survivor is also a breast cancer advocate. So, Miss Bridget, would you share your story today?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bridget Frick, and I'm happy to be here to share with you my story as well. And mine was one of forced leisure, and I'll get you to that point once I end the story. However, as was shared with you, I am a retired high school principal. At the time, we were preparing to open the school in August for our students. It was about July, and I was in the office, and I had a sundress on, and I just kept itching right here. Just kept itching and itching and itching, and I would scratch and scratch and scratch. So had one of the ladies in the office, and I said, Randy, come here for a second. I said, I keep itching here, but I feel a knot. And in my mind, immediately, I saw the two little M&M characters on television. That's what it felt like to me, like two M&Ms. So I said, I just had a mammogram. I don't understand what's going on. So that was that. August passed, September passed, October passed, November passed, right? It was the Sunday before we returned to school after the Thanksgiving holiday. It was December the 2nd. I remember vividly that I would have my annual checkup with my primary care physician. I was in the shower. My husband was watching basketball. I was in the shower and, of course, showering, and I felt the knots again. Immediately, I grabbed my cell phone and I wrote myself a note. Remember to discuss the feeling in the knots. I went in front, my husband was watching the game. I went in with a towel wrapped around. He said, what are you doing? I said, I think I have knots here. I said, they're intermittently, I don't feel them all the time. He said, well, aren't you going to the doctor tomorrow? And he said, now put some clothes on and get out of here. I'm watching the game. So I went to the doctor the next day, December the 2nd. It was a Monday. And I told the doctor what my primary care physician, what I experienced. He began to examine me. He said, I tell you what, my wife just went through this, Bridget. He said, you're going to get a holiday in about 3 weeks. This is not a death sentence. We're not going to rush. December the 18th, I want you to go. That's when you get out of school. I want you to go and have, we're going to have the biopsy and what have you. So, of course, couldn't get in. So I told him, I said, I can't get in. On January 30th, they allowed me to come in, and they did the original mammogram, the initial mammogram. And on the 6th of January, I had a biopsy. I'm very, very, very astute with my body, as Dr. Grimes said. So when the physician was taking the biopsy on both breasts, this side, when she took it, it was painful, and there was a loud claps with the instrument she used. And this side, when she took a biopsy, because I had, tubers on both sides, this one was soft. I said, okay, I can't see either my left breast or my right breast. Okay, so it was report card night at McMain School, and I had to go for my results. And so I said, I'll be right back. I'm going up the street. My husband and my mom met me at the imaging center on Napoleon and Claiborne. And I didn't have anything with me but my cell phone and my wallet. So that means I had to go back to school, right? So, of course, I saw everybody going in, and then I said, well, my appointment was 4 o'clock. Why am I the last person here? And the lady, Miss Esther, I remember her name, she had a pink pouch with her, a little pink bag. And as she was escorting me into the doctor's office, she clutched me real close to her, and I said to myself, I have the big C. So of course, when I went in, I told my mom and my husband to wait. I said, let me just go in here and do this. So I went in, and he spun around in a chair with all of these screens on, and he said, Miss Frick, I regret to inform you, but you have cancer. I said, let's stop right now. I called my mom and my husband in, and my mom is also a 2-time breast survivor. So I said, y'all, I have cancer. So I asked the doctor, I said, well, is it treatable? Is it beatable? He said, you got to jump through hoops. I said, where are they? Bring them on. So at that point, I had to go back to the school because it was a report card night. My husband said, let's go home. I said, no, I have to go back to the school, put some things in place, because at that time, I didn't know what the whirlwind had, become. But I said to myself, I've got cancer, but it doesn't have me. So I called my key people into my main office, into my private office in my conference room, and I said, listen, I just got back. Y'all know I went to get the results. I've been positively diagnosed with cancer. I said, but we have some things to do. And I get nervous, I start cleaning up. So I was picking up things in the office, and I immediately gave my keys to my assistant principal. I said, just hold these for a second. I don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring because I have to take care of my husband and my family. He lost his mother to cancer. So of course, at that time, I had a dear friend and a couple of people said, I'm signing out tonight. I'm not staying I'm coming with you. I said, no. I have this. We have this. We have to take care of the school, XYZ. So needless to say, I did not stay for report card conferences. I did go home because my mother and my husband were worried. They were concerned. So after conferences went on and what have you, the next day I did go to school. I returned to school and assumed my responsibilities. But at the time, I was also doing a health show called The Revolution. It was a reality show for weight loss for women. And so at that time, I told them I would have to stop doing the show because I had been diagnosed with cancer. And of course, it turned into being a cancer show, and it was televised. However, I had to have a bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction. So unlike Dr. Grimes, I took off. After 2 weeks, I took emergency leave from school because I did not know all that it was going to entail. So in being a high school principal, it's demanding and whatever, and I didn't want the stress levels to exacerbate, to make it, anything worse. So I took off. About 3 weeks after I had been diagnosed, I finally made the announcement to my staff. I called an emergency faculty meeting on a whim. I just went to HR that day. I said, today is my last day until, I don't know, I get through this. I said, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. So I called the emergency faculty meeting. It was a Friday. And I told everybody what had occurred, that effective immediately I was going on leave. And then I proceeded to take care of myself. My situation wasn't like Dr. Grimes. They didn't do mine immediately. So I became antsy because I had to wait like 3 to 4 weeks to get scheduled. And so during that time, I was preparing myself. I began to pamper myself more. I bought all of the things I wanted to have in my room, at the hospital. When I just did it all. I did the most, as the children would say. So of course, I had the surgery, had the bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction, and I went to chemo school because that was the procedure that my oncologist had. He had a class that's called chemo school to learn about what was going to take place in my body, what was the medications I was going, and what those things I would be experiencing and what to expect. So went through that, had chemo, 6 rounds of chemo, and I never, ever, ever was ill. I was tired on that Friday. I had chemo on a Friday from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And I tell you, when God knows his children and know what we like and we desire, the scripture tells us that we would delight ourselves in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart. Now, this may be simple to you, but to me, it assured me that God was there. I absolutely love rain. So on the days I had chemo, I would be leaving my house to go across the river to have my chemo. I had a private room that was all glass. I would go there on a sunny Friday morning. As soon as my chemo started, what happened? It rained. It rained the entire time that I had chemo, a 6 hours drip. It rained. When I got ready to leave, to get in the car, the sun was shining. When I went home, was on the sofa, resting and recuperating and just taking it easy until my husband came home. My mama was retired then as a teacher, and so she was able to bring me back and forth. But I also was on a high level of steroid. So I would kill as soon as I got home, but about 9 o'clock at night, I was wide awake until like 6 o'clock the next morning. My whole life had changed, so, you know, I was one of those nocturnal people. So we would play. That's when I got acclimated to Facebook and all that kind of stuff, right? So after that, went through all of the changes. I went through all of the treatments, never was ill. I got on a circuit of speaking for the community because I said that I would turn frantic women to fighting women. As I indicated to you, I was doing a reality show, and J.D. Roth, it was sponsored by J.D. Roth, produced by J.D. Roth, so he allowed, he called Touro Hospital. They allowed my story to be followed, and as a result of that, because I was a principal and people followed me from the television show, I had ladies from all over the world, 35, 40 years old, saying they had never had a mammogram or a pap smear. They emailed me because they got my email address off the, because they knew the school that I was with. So as a result of that, I said that I would take a platform of turning frantic women into fighting women because cancer is not for me, it is not for you. It starts in the mind, the perception is powerful. It taught me that I was braver than I believed ever. It taught me that I was smarter than I could ever think, and that I was more powerful than I could perceive, because it started in my mind for me that, I got this. Because you see, in 1988, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. And it is a neuromuscular disease, and I have classical myasthenia that I had been having the symptoms of myasthenia for 4 years, and people said it was in my mind until Dr. Ferris diagnosed me, and I had the test done and was treated with myasthenia gravis, which I still have. That's why you see me, I had to come up with using the rail because of the debilitating possibilities that it has. So I said that to say this. In 1988, when I was laid on a table with my chest wide open because I had to have a thymectomy, God could have taken me then. But I knew that with cancer, it would have to be a story for me in order to help others. And we don't understand why we go through certain things in life. I believe that God chooses his strongest soldiers for the toughest battles. And through that whole process, it has taught me that we have strength in us only if we believe. Only if we believe. It's a matter of how we look at things. It has taught me what it means to look at the glass half full as opposed to looking at the glass half empty, and all the possibilities and opportunities that challenges and obstacles bring our way. As a result of being a cancer patient, I have been able to give testimony, give strength, help people that I don't know. It's amazing how God does things. I was talking to a lady for 3 years, or 2 years over the telephone, never saw the lady in my life, never ever had met. I would talk to her, she would call me. She said, you got a minute? It would be all hours, you got a minute? Because she had it 4 times, she had cancer 4 times. She would call, I'm down, I'm this, that, and other. Well, right now I'm doing some contract work at Total Community Action in the Head Start department, and the lady saw me in the hallway. And she was standing on the side, and she was standing and she was waiting. She said, you don't know me. I said, you know me? She said, yeah. She said, I call you all the time. You are the person who have gotten me through my 4th round of chemo. And we're colleagues now because she was coming for a job. Did not know, had never seen the lady in my life. But she knew me. And how we met, one of my colleagues gave me her number one day and said, could you please go and dial this number? We were in a meeting, a staff meeting. I need you to go dial this number right now. There is somebody on the other end of the phone who needs you. I called it, and it was that lady who I just spoke of. And for 2 years, we talked, never knew her. I just knew her name, nickname was Miracle Child. And that she was and is, because she's had cancer 4 times, and now if you see her, it's amazing. So I just say to anyone who may be having a rough time or feeling that there's no hope, don't be dismayed. That is an attack of the devil. He wants you to feel defeated. But God can do exceedingly and abundantly above all that we can even think or ask. All you have to do is trust and believe.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Oh, I forgot to tell you about the forced leisure part. I'm sorry. One night, it's going to be quick. One night we were lying in bed and we were reading Daily Bread, the Daily Bread. And there was a story about a lady who, I forgot to tell you all that part. A lady who was diagnosed with a very serious illness, some form of cancer. And during her illness, her fight with cancer, she was shopping, she was going to lunch, she was traveling. My husband said, Bridget, read this, because this is you. He said, you didn't have cancer, you were forced to leisure.
Wow, how wonderful. That is a great story. Thank you. What a great finish. Thank you so much. Okay, we're near the end. I know we're a little over, but we save the best for last. Dr. Prasad?
I think I want to offer, I have the, I guess, unique opportunity to diagnose breast cancer. And all of the women who I see are not yet at that moment where they could be as fierce as Miss Nedra and as fierce as these 3 women here. That is a point where they are at their most vulnerable. And in a very short amount of time, I need to get them to a point of being these women right here. And I think what I want, the message I think what I want to say is if anybody does get breast cancer, it is okay to be weak in that moment. It is okay to be vulnerable. It is a normal, heck, I was afraid to get on the stage today. You know, it's okay to be vulnerable. You will get to this point. And sometimes when time has passed and you are alive and you are a believer in God, in yourself, you can sit here and talk about your strength. But when you are learning in that moment, like Mr. Dookie said, like when you're learning in that moment, all you can think about is how much you want to hug your grandchildren and how much you want to see your children. I diagnosed someone this week at 25 years old. Okay, so how much you want to have children, how much you want to get to 40 years old, and so it's okay. One thing I tell women is with cancer, you have a chance. And I know that sounds a little, counterintuitive. One thing I was very much so affected by was Kobe Bryant when he died, because he was living his best life. He was rich. He was at the top of his craft. He was a great father, a great husband. And just like that, he was gone. And so no matter how many riches, no matter what kind of mansion you live in, no matter what awards you've won, your life can end just like that. But with cancer, you have a chance. You have a chance to live your best life. And that's what I tell my patients. I tell them some version of the Kobe Bryant story, that you have a chance today to go out and enjoy the Jazz Fest, to enjoy the rain, to enjoy the sun, to travel, to say I'm sorry to whoever you needed to say I'm sorry to say I love you to the people you couldn't say you were sorry to. Cancer, you have a chance if you give yourself a shot. And whether that is knowing your body, or whether that is making sure you get your screenings, whatever the case may be, don't defeat yourself by ignoring it. And don't defeat yourself by denial. You will one day wear that S on your chest, like these women. When I'm opening up their shirts and I'm doing their biopsies, I tell them I already see it. You don't see the S. I see it. I've seen many of the survivors. I've seen many of the S's. I see it. Don't defeat yourself and take advantage of the fact that you actually have a chance.
Thank you so much. I know we're a little over. Can we take a couple of questions? Two questions. Any questions today?
Well, I'm going to ask a question. I myself was diagnosed. I won't say I had cancer. I was diagnosed. I called my mother and said, they said I have cancer. So the mindset. But my question is, how is it determined when you're starting a treatment, whether it's chemo, radiation, or if both? Because I've had chemo. I was to have 6 and I've only had 4. I've had my surgery and now I'm about to start radiation. They don't always explain to you the whys, but I'm a person that asks questions. So just trying to understand, just going through that journey, is it always necessary to have both chemo and radiation?
Excellent question, and I do believe in staying in my lane. And my lane is diagnosis, okay? So I can tell you in my sleep what breast cancer looks like, who has it. I can tell you that all day. Dr. Larned, who is walking up, and she may be able to answer that question better for you.
The question was chemo versus radiation? Yeah, so it depends on several factors. One is the individual clinical factors of a patient, what other health issues they may have, or comorbidities as we call them. And then the second is what we look at in terms of the tumor pathology. So we actually do a lot of work with tumors, looking at not just the size, but the type, where it started in the breast, looking to see if it spread regionally, meaning to local lymph nodes under the arm, or obviously anywhere more than that. Then we also look at certain staining for certain markers. So female hormones is a big one. Some tumors stain for that because female hormones actually help them grow. HER2 is another big one. Then there's some newer factors that we look at. So depending on those factors, sometimes it requires chemotherapy. So if it's above a certain size, or it's HER2 positive, or it doesn't express female hormones, those most of the time require some chemotherapy. If it is strongly hormonal positive and all other factors look good, sometimes we can bypass chemotherapy and just use pills to treat that. And then radiation is usually required if you either have margins that you couldn't clear with surgery, if it went to the lymph nodes under the arm, or if it's a tumor that the woman opted just to do a partial breast surgery and not have the whole breast removed. That'd be a general answer to that. Did that help? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
You need to speak to your doctor. He needs to explain things to you differently why we're doing that. So that's exactly what he said, but that's for every patient. But you're supposed to have a rapport with your doctor to explain things to you in terms you can understand.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. I ask questions, again, but for somebody that don't know, because not everybody have that knowledge to understand it. So, like I said, I'm clear with it. I'm clear with mine, but I ask the question so. Right, and sometimes patients don't always understand, but I was asking in general because, again, we do have patients that don't know how to advocate for themselves. And so, again, to ask these questions in an open forum maybe help someone else as well.
Hi. I appreciate your stories. Dr. Broussard, or anyone on the panel, I know, and to kind of piggyback off of the previous panel, that there is a lot of stigma for certain types of malignancies, breast cancer being almost a malignancy of women. But I know that men can also get breast cancer and be diagnosed with breast cancer. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what you would say to men, in the spirit of education and just letting our community know that this is not a malignancy of just women, that men can also.
You are absolutely correct. My first cousin at 50 years old was diagnosed, was it last year or year before last, with breast cancer. And so men absolutely get breast cancer. And we typically see kind of a slightly more advanced stage in diagnosis with men who have breast cancer, because there's no way in the world that I have breast cancer that you're thinking if you're a man. Typically, a breast cancer for a man is going to just be something that's kind of hard and fixed and doesn't move and go away, okay? And so many men have a much more common condition that I see several men a week for something called gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue right behind the nipples, and it can be sore and painful. and they come in talking about how much it hurts, and I say, welcome to me since I was 13. But nonetheless, that is not what the breast cancer is. The breast cancer is oftentimes in men not going to be behind the nipple. It's not that it can't be, but when you're dealing with something that is painless, if you're a man and you have a painless fixed lump, then just let us check it out. It's super easy for us to check it out and tell you you're okay than you waiting 2 or 3 years before you see it kind of ulcerating or breaking through the skin. So, and to the young lady here, this is why we have these things. Many patients, whether they're black or white, oftentimes it's a socioeconomic, doctors don't speak to them on the level that they need to be spoken to. And we can say, like, talk to me like in a language that I will understand, and that doesn't happen. And that's a sign that you need to get somebody else, okay?
Thank you so much to my esteemed panelists, and I appreciate you sharing your stories, and thank you for having us, and I hope that, we'll be here a little afterwards, and so if you have other questions, we're happy to stay around, so thank you.
All right. So while we're getting the group photo, I mentioned earlier to you just a couple of announcements to reminder. Your gray ticket is for your meal, so make sure you have a gray ticket to pick up a bag lunch. And then also, I also have a raffle for some Pelican tickets. So we're going to do the first raffle now. I'm going to pull some numbers until I get somebody in this room because you do have to be present. So let's see. The number I just pulled, 1941128. Anyone? Nope. Once, twice. 1941128. If not, I'll go to the next. Try this again. And let's see, what's the next one? What about 1941118? Yay! Winner! Congratulations. May I give you your certificate. For those of you who are online, we're going to take a break. We'll be back at 12:30 for lunch. Thank you.
picture with you.
I'm about to start getting folks to come in. I'm about to get your crowd in. We got, I set it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Hello. Hello, everyone. Our next panel session, prostate cancer, will be starting in 5 minutes. Next panel session, prostate cancer, 5 minutes.
That mic is really good for hearing up in there.
Okay. All right. You gonna get me another one? Another mic? That's fine. I'm gonna put this on this.
Check. 1. Check. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the next panel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the next panel. So if everyone can make their ways to the main sanctuary, about to start the next panel discussion. Everyone that's in the gallery and the fellowship hall.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next panel. For those of you who are online, thank you for your patience and waiting for us to get started. Our next panel this afternoon is going to be on prostate cancer, and I'm going to introduce our speakers to you this afternoon. Our first panelist and moderator is Judge Mark Johnson from the Louisiana Fifth Circuit of Appeals. Is that correctly? All right, thank you. Our next guest of honor is Mr. Edward Thomas, cancer survivor, 20 years. Thank you, welcome. And our next guest of honor is Mr. Michael Spicer, cured of cancer 4 years ago. Welcome. Our next guest of honor is Mr. Alfred Polk. Welcome. And then last but not least, Dr. Zoe Learned, hematologist oncologist at Ochsner. So I am going to immediately turn this over to Judge Johnson. Make sure everyone has a mic, and I might have stolen it.
Hello. Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon. We're so happy to have you all today to talk about such an important topic, a topic that is so important to men and definitely important to the African American community. This is our opportunity to share with you from an educational standpoint and just awareness, because we know how important screening is to men as it relates to prostate cancer. I'm a part of a community advisory board at Xavier University that targets African Americans with cancer. And we were formed about 8 years ago, and we've had the opportunity to really go out into the community and just make the community aware of cancer, make them aware of the awareness of it, and also making them aware of the type of screening that's so important. Because we know with prostate cancer, early detection is so important. It can make a difference between life or death. We know that prostate cancer is one of the common cancers. As a matter of fact, it's a cancer that's curable, but of course it has to be detected early. So it's important that we as a community, meaning the African American community, reach out to those who would need this help and those who need this education. The panel today will basically share their stories, and they have some awesome stories. Matter of fact, 3 of them actually serve on that community advisory board with me, and they have told their stories many times before, and I'm sure they have touched individuals. Also, we have our Dr. Learned, Zoe Learned, also on the panel with us. So I'm going to start with Mr. Edward Thomas. Can you please share with us, the audience, your personal history about your battle with cancer and lessons you've learned in your experience?
Yes, I can. My battle is a two-battle thing. I had bladder cancer, prostate cancer, and what happened, when I talked to the doctor, he told me, he said, look, he said, you need to take them out, both of them out. So I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, you make up your mind. He said, but I'm going to tell you one thing. If you don't take it out, you might take chemo and radiation, and that may kill you because it's so bad. The bladder cancer was really very aggressive. It was eating into the bladder walls. So he said, I'm going to give you a couple of days. So instead of a couple of days, I called him that evening. I said, yeah, come on, let's do this. So he took both of them out, the bladder and the prostate. He said, because I can't guarantee you will live longer, 5 more years or so. He said, but you won't die from this. You may get hit by a bus, but you won't die from this. So I made up my mind and said, oh, well, let's do it. So we did the surgery, and what happened? I had the old type surgery with the cut. I didn't have the Da Vinci robot. I had the old surgery. And while it was in there, they did samples of the lymph nodes. Everything came back negative. So I didn't have to have chemo, radiation, or anything. That's been 20 years ago. 20 years. And I get checked every 6 months. Now I get checked every year, but at first 5 or 6 years, it was every 6 months. And I see my doctor every now and then, and I kid him, And he told me one time, I had to cut you wide open, but you're doing all right now. I said, yeah. And he's a good doctor. He gave me good advice. But the thing that's about advice is a lot of people don't listen to their doctor's advice. They don't listen. Because I could have said no and tried the chemo and radiation, and maybe I wouldn't be here now. I got two guys I know didn't, and they're not here now. Because once you start taking radiation and the chemo, and it gets real bad, I think the prostate gets fused, doesn't it? It gets fused, and they do what they call a radical prostatectomy or salvage prostatectomy. And sometimes they can't do it, I don't believe. And if they can't do it, then you're stuck with it. Those guys really suffer, and they both died. So if you got a young man in your family, an old man in your family, tell them to go get checked. My son is 50 years old now, and I'm on his case every day. He finally went and got checked. He's doing okay. But it was in the family, and I didn't really realize it until I fill out the questionnaire. When you fill out the questionnaire and list who had cancer in your family, that's when you really know it's serious. Because you don't think about it till then. My grandpa died from prostate cancer. My 2 uncles died from prostate cancer, and my mother died from colon cancer. So when I wrote that down, I'm looking at him and said, wow. I need to get this done, get it out. And I called him the same day and told him, let's go with it. And that's been 20 years ago.
Yes, family history is so important. Now, you've been a 20-year survivor. We also have on the panel someone who has been surviving even more years than that, and that's Mr. Michael Spicer. Michael, can you share your story with the audience, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon to everyone. So yeah, my situation is one of those that actually was dealt with by miraculous events. But I'll share with you that I went to urgent care because I was having pains in the lower part of my stomach on the right-hand side. And the pains were lasting for about 3 days. And after the 3rd day, my wife has a lot of influence, like a lot of our wives has influence over us. So she said, hey, you're going to get checked out. So I did go to urgent care, and they actually thought I had appendicitis. So they told me, you need to leave here right now and go to the emergency room, over to the hospital, like right now. And they said, we're going to call over there and let them know that you're on your way. This is very serious. So we did leave there, went to the emergency room, and they started running tests for appendicitis. And I guess they put me through about 7 or 8 different tests. And they couldn't find the appendicitis that they were looking for. So they eventually said, well, based on our test, you definitely do not have appendicitis, but we're just going to do an MRI just to make sure that we didn't miss anything. So I said, okay, great, let's do it. I've been here 8 hours already anyways. So they did the MRI, and they came back and said, well, you definitely do not have appendicitis, but we hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you have 3 nodules on your prostate. So I was like, really? He said, yes. So they said, well, we've already called the clinic, and we're scheduling you to go to this clinic and get this taken care of right away. Well, you know, I've always been a man of prayer, my family, my wife, so we decided to just pray about the situation. And we didn't go to the clinic, and we were looking for a specific doctor that specialized in this field. And we did run across a doctor who you may have heard of before, Dr. Sartor. So Dr. Sartor, he's a specialist in this field, and he can do a prostate exam and determine from the prostate exam whether you have cancer or not. And there were only 2 of those doctors in the United States at that time. He was one of them, and he was here. So my wife called and scheduled an appointment with him. They said it'll be about 3 weeks before he can see you because he's booked up. I said, okay, well, we're going to wait the 3 weeks. So I did get a call from the emergency room, and they said, well, you haven't gone to the clinic yet. We referred this clinic. I said, no, we decided to take a different route. And, you know, needless to say, they were very upset with me about that. They said, well, you need to go to the clinic now. I said, well, we prayed about it. We're just going to wait the 3 weeks. So we did. After 2 weeks, my wife got a call from Sartor's office, and he said, well, okay, we had a person that canceled their appointment. So now we have an opening, you can come in. So which I did. I went into the office, he did the test, and he looked at the x-rays and everything. And I'm just saying, in the meantime, we were just lifting everything up in prayer. You know, we have a prayer team at the church, intercessory prayer, and we're prayer warriors. So we just began to pray about this whole thing. And when we got over there, he did a prostate exam, and he basically said, well, not only do you not have cancer, but the 3 nodules are gone. So they were all gone, all resolved. So I would just like to say that prayer is one thing that works for sure. But one of the things that we know from being a man of God is that God created doctors also. And the doctors have skills and knowledge. So we're always willing to go to the doctor and find out what's going on. So we don't want to avoid that. But one of the things that I would like to point out is that because of that, it did create a scare, you know, and most men that I know of, most of my friends, even my church members, that's one of the things that we just will not discuss. You know, there's 3 things that I know of that men won't talk about. That's bills, a honey-do list, and prostate cancer. You know, they just won't talk about those things. So you women have a tremendous influence on the men because, you know, when you talk to the men, it's not about just about us having prostate cancer or the possibility of having it, but it's about the family. You know, it's like you can explain to the men that we want you here longer for our family, for the kids, and how important that is. Because without your influence, I can tell you the average man is not going to say anything to you about the prostate. They're not going to talk to the doctor about the prostate. It's a subject that they just won't talk about. So that was one of the things that prompted me to study more about the prostate, to find out all the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the good and the bads. You know, we're focused on prevention, cancer prostate prevention. So we want to catch everything in advance and try to stop it ahead of time, if possible. But even if you do have it, with the technology that we have today, we can slow it down or prevent it altogether, from spreading any further. So I would just like to say that if you have men in your family, to share this information with them, and especially you women, if you have men in your family, share the information with them, because it's very important that it's predicted at an early age, or early stage, I should say. It's preventable. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's true. And the big thing with men, and definitely African American men, you know, we're very, very private about certain things. So obviously, when it comes to our health and it comes to certain things, that we just figure we got it. We don't need anybody help. So the fact that you were able to share this story with others and talk to others about it, it really makes it, you know, hey, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to say that I have this problem, or these are the issues that's going on with my body. And we definitely should share it with our doctors. You know, sometimes we, as men, you know, you just don't want to share certain things. But also on the panel, we have a community advocate who's also a part of the Community Advisory Board. And I would like him to just share a few things of just dealing with the community, the different things that the community is faced with as far as, you know, making cancer and definitely prostate cancer aware.
Yeah, afternoon. I'm not a cancer survivor, but cancer's been all around me in my family. I had 2 brothers died from lung cancer, 1 from colon cancer, and my wife was a 7-year breast cancer survivor who passed in 2007. So when I was asked to be on this committee, I was elated because bringing that experience and then learning about prostate cancer, well, it was just a plus. So it's been a good journey for me. I can't thank Xavier University enough, Mark for what he's done, and these guys for sharing their experience with me, because it gave me a lot of information to bring back to the black community. So it's been enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pope. We also have Dr. Zoe Learned on the panel with us too, and she's going to give her reflections on our 2 survivors' story.
Great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing those stories. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. I think there were a couple of things that I took away from both stories, but I think some of the key things to take away is just early detection in general. Prostate cancer, I'm very lucky to get to do every day, because it is one of the cancers that we can cure. We can actually screen for early. But even if we catch it later, we have a lot of treatment options that we can offer, and patients can do well for a very long time. So I look at my job as really twofold. I hope people never have to meet me. I'm a medical oncologist, so that means that usually when you're meeting me, it means some treatment systemically is going to be required. But what we do in the front end is probably the most important, and I think you alluded to it really well in your talk. One is just screening, and I know I talked to you before the panel started. You were lucky enough to have twice a year screening with the PSA. You know, that screening test can really help us capture prostate cancers in the earlier phase of things, so that we can certainly get patients to cure. The second thing that you mentioned was family history, and really having a good understanding of your family history can be very, very important. Especially in the African American community, because we do know in prostate cancer that African American men are more likely to get it younger, and they're more likely to actually have a risk of passing away from the cancer, because their cancers can often be higher risk in terms of how they present, or they may present later because of not having access or screening. So when we talk to patients, there's several things that we do even in the initial visit, and one of those is a good family history to determine if brothers, fathers, grandfathers, uncles had any type of cancer, not just prostate cancer, because many of them are linked genetically. The second thing is, once we have the prostate cancer diagnosis, is reminding you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and your sons, not just about prostate cancer, but increased risk. In general, we tell people that screening would start around the age of 50 for men, but that is different for the African American community. We should screen no later than 45 for the average African American male without any real significant risk factors. But if we have family history, especially with first-degree relatives, meaning a parent or a sibling, we do recommend that we move that screening date up till 40. And a lot of men at 40 aren't really thinking about going to the doctor that regularly. You know, that's kind of the prime of your life. But it is very key to have an annual physical with screening appropriate tests, and prostate is definitely one of them. Then again, I guess the next thing I would say is that if you do find that you have a cancer in your prostate gland, you can live without it. And you can live well without it and move on and have successful lives for years later. There used to be a lot of fears about the side effects of the different treatments that we do, but we have come a long way in cancer. And what we do know is that if we're going to cure cancers, getting them early, hopefully having a local treatment option, whether it be surgery or radiation, is really key. And the surgeries now, fortunately, don't have to be open. They can often be done robotically, meaning that you're left with very little in terms of side effects or complications from that. I'll be honest, I think some of the things people are concerned about the most are sexual dysfunction. And we find that we've come a long way in prevention of any sexual dysfunction after the removal of a prostate gland or radiation. But we also have great physical therapy and other options that can be done afterwards to make sure that we continue to preserve the importance of that. Urination is another one. Lots of people are concerned, is it going to affect their urinary tract and ability to urinate easily? And we've come a long way there as well. And then radiation is better than it's ever been. They can do a stereotactic approach that's very quick and very low toxicity, where it's almost like a missile to the cancer target. So it's very different than what we used to do even 5, 6, 7 years ago. And then you really do want to have honest conversations with your doctors once you get a diagnosis of prostate cancer. It's very important for us to sit down and talk about the risk factors of your specific cancer so we can guide you for, is surgery best, is radiation best, do you need any medical treatments in our clinic? And we're always happy to help in any way we can.
Doctor, how important is it changing your lifestyle, you know, what you were doing before once you get this type of diagnosis? How important changing, you know, if you smoked or drink, how does that impact being diagnosed with prostate cancer?
Yeah, I think people are becoming a lot more aware of the different risk factors for development of any cancer. Prostate cancer is really not one that's associated with smoking, for example, for a risk factor, but it does have some lifestyle risk factors. Diet and weight management being important in some of that. Genetics is probably a really big one, especially in the African American community. We're learning more and more about some high-risk genetic features that can lead to an increased risk of prostate cancer as well. And then once you have prostate cancer, anything we can do to modify lifestyle choices to minimize the risk of recurrence of that or any other cancer development is a key part to the job that we do. So I would say that I'm really lucky that the job that I do is important, but I'm part of a larger team to accomplish that job. My job as a medical oncologist is really to focus on all of the health issues that a patient may have that can get in the way or aggravate treatment. My job is to offer treatments that make sense and help either cure or extend lives for patients. But I couldn't do my job without a multidisciplinary team, and that includes other physicians, for example, those that do radiation or surgery like Dr. Bardot. And that also includes our ancillary service team. So we have an incredible physical therapy team. We have an incredible nutrition team. We do everything from acupuncture to minimize side effects of treatment. And that team helps get our patients and our men with prostate cancer through into the other side. Because I'll tell you, at the end of the day, there's nothing more important than good quality of life, being able to survive and move forward.
And just real quickly, and this just came to mind, I noticed some years ago they kind of changed and I'm going to say the medical protocol as it relates to testing. You know, when you go to your doctor, whether or not, you know, they do the digital or they do the PSA, there was a change some years ago as to whether or not your doctor was going to order certain things. So as a patient, what should we be asking our doctor as it relates to possibility of prostate cancer?
That's a great question. I think first of all, go to your doctor. Don't wait until you think that you're old enough to need to go to the doctor annually. Patients should be going to get an annual physical exam, and that's really your entire lifetime. But certainly by the time you hit the age of 40, you should be going for an annual physical, not just for appropriate cancer screening, but cholesterol panel, heart disease assessments, those types of things. Second of all, when you go to your doctor, ask for all appropriate screening that would be appropriate based on your age and your family history. And make sure you communicate with your doctor. This is my family history. Be prepared to kind of talk about it a little bit. Here's my personal history: smoke, amount of alcohol use, those types of things. Don't be shy to talk to your doctor. And then don't shy away from the examination. It is not a challenging examination. I'm a female in the prostate cancer space. Obviously, some men may be uncomfortable talking about things, but I'll tell you what, we're really great listeners. We're really great motivators. We really work our patients to the next step. And I think it is very important not to be shy to discuss almost anything with your doctor. This is not something we're sharing outside of the space of the exam room, but we're taking all that information to get you to the next best step.
Thank you. Now to the panel, I guess begin to start wrapping it up. What would be your take-home, message to the audience as it relates to your story? You can start with that word.
Well, my take-home message is early detection. Just like she's saying, go see your doctor, listen to your doctor. A lot of guys, two guys I know personally that didn't listen after they got the diagnosis. They wanted to try to keep their prostate glands because they didn't want to lose their sex life, but they lost their life. They're not here now. So, which is more important? So listen to your doctor once you go see him.
Mike?
Yes, I would like to say my takeaway is that based on the information that she just shared, that we should, as men and women, learn as much as we can about prostate cancer. That gives us the ability to share it with others. Since I went through what I went through, I began to learn more about it, and I share it with all of my church members and all of my friends, and help them to open up and talk about it, because prostate cancer is a pretty serious thing, and early detection is the best thing to combat it. So.
Thank you. Alfred?
Yeah, we've heard two stories, and Ed chose to do the surgery. Michael did his through prayer. Just remember, Christ's best friend was Dr. Luke. He didn't come to put Luke out of business. Luke didn't come to put him out of business. Prayer works, and it always does, but Christ just may be telling you, go see the doctor and let the doctor take care of it. So if prayer doesn't do it, then the answer is, God said, I'll guide the doctor's hand. I guide the surgeon's hand, so go see the doctor. So it works both ways. So don't think that one way is the answer.
Thank you. Dr. Lerner?
Yeah, I think these stories are incredible and really help people in the community understand. Talk openly. Cancer shouldn't be a scary word. Most people are impacted by cancer in a relative, a loved one, a friend, and there's no need to maintain a secrecy or be embarrassed about these diagnoses. This is something that most of us are going to experience in our lifetime. I know that's what personally got me interested in the work that I do. So I'll say, instead of being embarrassed, let's all be advocates for each other and support each other through the journeys by sharing our stories and how we can help. So thank you all.
Thank you. And we are right on time because we have 5 minutes for questions. Any questions from the audience?
Well, my question is, I think I got a lot enough about how do we convince the males, our male parts, to go to the doctor? Because a lot of them don't like going to the doctor, especially our black males. They refuse to go to the doctors. They refuse to take their high blood pressure medicine when they have it. And it's hard to get them into the doctor. Maybe if we get them in, maybe they'll listen a little better. But how about the guys get to start pushing each other to the doctors because they're not listening to the ladies?
The barbershop. She said go to the barbershop. It's interesting you say that. We're talking about prostate cancer, and I think the women outnumber us probably with maybe 80-20 in this audience. I'm not sure about the listening audience, but 80-20. So very good questions. Guys, you have any suggestions?
All from Saints tickets. All from Saints tickets.
Yeah, I think events like this are crucial. Get out into the community where people are and where they're willing to listen to these stories. I think they make a big difference. I also think that we have some responsibility at job places and at the insurance level. When we get our coverage, when we have our health screening for our jobs, require this to be a part of it, make it easy for people. People have very busy lives, both at work and in families, and so taking time off for the doctor is sometimes a challenge. Come to them, meet them where they are.
And I think with the advisory committee, we decided that, you know, the black male's not going to come looking for information, so we brought it to the neighborhood. So I think just sharing what you learned here today with some male you might know could help, because we don't like to go looking for information. But we'll listen if you bring it to us.
Yeah, I would like to.
This is something that I wanted to say, because what we have learned in our projects is that sometimes men believe prostate cancer screening is the finger test, and they don't want that. The finger test, the DRE test. They don't want that. What in our study we have learned that is what they always believe. They don't know that there is a prostate cancer screening that is a blood test. And we have seen people like you that go to the doctor and they got the lab exams and they got the blood and they don't know they are getting the PSA test. So they have had the test, but they don't know. So we are learning that we have to educate the men and women that there is a prostate cancer test that is just the blood test. It's very easy. And after that, if they get positive, they will go to do the other tests if necessary.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of people that are nervous about the concept of a digital rectal examination and actually feel that it's a violation or something that's kind of against where their belief system even lies. That's probably the least critical part of our diagnosis of prostate cancer. The PSA screening and some of the imaging we do is way more important. Sometimes I'll tease my men and say, you know, women have gone through way worse for a very long time for our examinations, but I don't downplay what that feels like and some of the emotions around that exam. But we do remind men all the time that it is not the most critical part of all of this. So we'll meet you where your comfort level is.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes. First of all, thank you guys for putting this together for us. I think it's very informative for us to hear what you're saying from each of you guys that's on the panel today. My question is, with the advancement of cancer treatments, is immunotherapy an option for this type of cancer instead of chemotherapy or radiation?
First of all, I'll say the most important part of treatment for prostate cancer is really actually anti-hormonal therapy. That's probably our biggest impact. So the nice thing about prostate cancer, but it's also the challenging thing for men, is that it is fed by the male hormone testosterone. So most of our treatments involve manipulating or trying to decrease that amount of hormone as part of the treatment for the cancer. As cancers get more advanced, that's when chemotherapy comes into play. And immunotherapy has minimal role in prostate cancer. It does have some role, but we actually have some much cooler stuff in the metastatic space with therapies that are directed to PSA, how it spreads. So that includes things like vaccines and significantly targeted therapies that we use through radiation. So it's a great space to be in. Most of our patients live for years and years, even with advanced metastatic diagnoses these days. Thank you for that question.
Any more questions? Well, we want to thank you all very much. Thank you very much for being a great audience. Thank you.
All right, for our online audience, we will be starting up in about 3 minutes. We're on time. So the next group will be on lung cancer. We'll start at 1:15 sharp. right, we are going to get started with our final group on lung cancer. I'm going to ask our panelists to come to the stage, please. Our first panelist, moderator Lindsay White, who is the director of the smoking cessation program at Ochsner Health. Welcome. All right, our first honorable guest is Mr. Roland Doucette, who is a cancer survivor, 5 years. The lovely Miss Janie Blackman, in remission for 3 years. And last but not least, Dr. Brian Pettiford, thoracic surgeon at Ochsner. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Yes. So good morning, afternoon. My name is Lindsay White. I'm the smoking cessation director at Ochsner, and we offer smoking cessation services for free for anyone that would like to quit smoking 18 and older. I think one of the most important things that I've come to realize over the last 10 years is that how it does grossly affect African Americans and Hispanic populations. And so making sure that we are able to offer these services is really important to me as health equity issues. My career has been spent in public health, and so making sure that we can continue to offer these services and that nobody that wants to quit can't quit for free. So I appreciate the survivors coming today, and so can't wait to hear their stories. So Roland Doucette, if you don't mind, can you share with the audience your personal story about your battle with cancer?
Well, actually, I went to my MD because of a lump in my throat. I thought I had a problem. And about 4 days later, after the test that I went through, she said, well, the good thing is, she said, there's nothing wrong with your lymph nodes. But unfortunately, we found a spot in your lung. So my next move was actually to have the biopsy, and it was malignant. And I wound up having surgery. It wasn't 5 years, actually just about 5 months now, because Dr. Pettiford, who was my surgeon, thank God for Dr. Pettiford. And Dr. DeGrange was the one who actually found the problem that I had. And I was blessed that I had not only Dr. DeGrange in my life now, but Dr. Pettiford in my life, but Dr. Phillips, who's anesthesiologist at Ochsner's. So I went in that operating room feeling as though I'm going to make this without a problem, because I had people that I really, truly felt comfortable with, and I think that was the biggest part of it. And then when they brought me to the operating room, I remembered the music was playing, and I told one of the nurses, I said, we could be listening at Motown? She said, we are, not you. So I understand that was something that Dr. Pettiford really enjoyed. And I said, well, that was going to make him happy. Let him be happy. So actually, I'm a blessed person. I come out of that surgery, and no chemo, no radiation. We're going to have checked every 6 months to make sure that I'm still good. But I just feel as I'm extremely blessed that I had these particular 3 people in my life. I really am.
That's great. And is there any experiences or common challenges that you believe the community faces dealing with cancer that we should know about?
I think what's been repeatedly said today is that people, like a lot of my friends, they'll tell me, I don't want to know. And that's the craziest thing I ever heard. You know, when you say you don't want to know, I don't understand that logic. I never did. But what is that stigma, especially in the black community, that they can diagnose their own problem or they'll go away, you know, by some prayer. I don't know what their philosophies are, but we've got to teach. We've got to teach, and we've got to make sure that the people that's doing this, the preaching, is people that people trust. Because if people trust you, if they trust you, they'll listen to you. But if there's no trust, they don't want to listen to you at all.
That's very true. I think churches play such an integral role into the Black community and making sure health is preached correctly. So that's great. And yourself, Ms. Blackman, what was your experience with cancer battle and kind of any experiences?
Well, if I may first, I want to thank Oxner and I want to thank Xavier University, Genentech, Dr. Hayward, Dr. Bryant, all of the team who put this symposium on today, Franklin Avenue for hosting it. I'm so grateful to Almighty God to be here. I am a miracle. And I want to say, I'm a non-smoker. This all happened, I want to say, about 2020. I had this unusual cough, and my daughter would always say, "Mother, what is that cough?" And as Mr. Rowland said, I kept self-diagnosing. I'm going like, oh, it's just sinus or whatever. So on a trip to my cardiologist, he again mentioned to me that I had this unusual cough and that I should see a pulmonologist, a specialist. Let's find out what's really going on. As a result of that visit, he suggested that I, have the X-ray, MRI, and they discovered that I did have a mass on my lung. So the biopsy, he suggested I should have a biopsy, and that was done the end of 2020. And during that procedure, or I should say post the procedure, I ended up what they thought was a stroke. I'm changing my speech and all of that, so they did all these tests. Make a long story short, I woke up in ICU. 4 days later, the biopsy came back. The doctor said, I have some good news and bad news. You did not have a stroke, but the tumor is malignant. And we can't treat you here at this hospital, so we're transferring you to Oxner. And the oncologist suggested a young man who was the head of that thoracic surgery, none other than this wonderful man I'm sitting next to here, Dr. Brian Pettifor. And my daughter, weeks ago, had been reading about the research that he and the team at Oxner were doing. Had no idea that I was going to be, a patient of his. So we went in to see the oncologist, and he said, well, it's going to be a long, maybe 3 weeks, because he's quite busy. So my daughter and I, we believe, we pray. And so she said, Mama, don't worry, we're going to get an appointment. Immediately when we walked out of the oncologist's office, his secretary said, oh, there was a cancellation. And Dr. Pettiford's office said, if you can wait 1 hour, they'll see you. Well, I waited that 1 hour. and the rest, of course, is history. We met with him, and I can't thank God enough. God is just so amazing, the way he orchestrated everything in divine order. But this young man walked in, and, he was, very thorough. It all happened so quickly. And then I was told that I was going to have a robotic surgery, 5-hour surgery. God is awesome. Who would have thought a robot, right? And these guided hands here. So the surgery went well, 5 hours. And there's so much. My daughter told me not to go on and on and on. But anyway, after surgery, the results came back. And I ended up, because of my immune system compromised, with something called Guillain-Barré. And so I ended up being paralyzed for 7 weeks. But getting back to the lung cancer, thanks be to God, it was stage 1, no radiation, no chemo. But I must say that, we've come a long way. And as Brother Doucette said, I kept self-diagnosing. But God was all in it. And the team over at Oxner, I can't say enough about the team. It's a team effort. It was the guidance of the brilliance of my physician, but also everyone there, was cheering you on and praying for you. So I'm a testimony here that, it's good for early detection, but I'm a miracle. And I'm grateful, thankful. I cannot say enough how blessed I am. I really am. And I know I could go on and on and on, but I am blessed and I'm grateful. And there's so, as patients, as Brother Roland said earlier, you know, we have to listen. We have to share our experiences with others. But we also have to reach back and thank those in the medical field for what they're doing. Because, you know, we think they're pouring out so much, but we need to learn how to pour back into them. So that's why I'm really grateful about being here today.
Well, I think telling your story helps doing that. So it gives them a voice to be able to, you know, hear what a survivor looks like. I think it's really interesting that you were not a smoker.
Non-smoker.
So over 50,000 people die from secondhand smoke every year. So I think that's interesting that you're coughing. I would have probably done the same thing. Like, it's got to be something else. We were in the midst of COVID at that time, so I can only imagine that there was a lot of things going through your head, and cancer was not one of them.
Not one of them.
No. Is there any other challenges, common challenges that you feel like the community faces when dealing with cancer that your experiences, you know, kind of shined light to?
Well, earlier today, one of the young ladies on the panel, you know, we always refer to cancer as the big C. And so doing all of this, the experience, you know, some folks are well-wishers and, you know, they want to cheer you on, but they don't know what to say. And so my mother lived to be 95 years old. My mother was a cancer survivor twice. So, you know, I knew about cancer in my family. She was the first one. But when people say, oh, you got the big C, you know, so, you know, the big C, you know. But I know a big J, so I kept talking to him, and I said, okay, Big J, we got the big C here. You know, we know what we're going to do. But I kept confessing that I was healed, healthy, whole, strong, in Jesus' name, and I listened, and I had faith. And so now I have a purpose now. I'm an advocate. I can go around and tell other folks, not only about the goodness of Jesus, but about being proactive. You know, there I was self-diagnosing, coughing and thinking nothing of it when there was an underlying condition. So, you know, when you have something going on that's out of the box, out of the norm, then you need to, you know, to pay attention to that.
I think that's a great lesson. Dr. Pettiford, they've said so many kind things, and we just met, so I'm excited. I'll be working with you shortly, I'm sure. Can you share your reflections on Mr. Doucette and Ms. Blackman's experience and kind of what your role was with their health care?
Thanks. First of all, I would like to echo Ms. Blackman's comments. I would like to thank all of the sponsors for the opportunity to share our experiences with you. One thing that I found in common with both of their cases is the amount of familial support. I think that's important as patients undergo a cancer journey. I was struck, and we don't always see this. Sometimes patients will arrive to hear a cancer diagnosis by themselves, and I think it's a tragedy. And so it was reassuring and quite frankly refreshing that in both cases these individuals had their family members present. I think also something that is striking with both cases is the time that cancer is the most likely to be impacted in a positive way is when it's either found incidentally or through screening. And so in Mr. Doucette's case, it was found incidentally. He came in for a different reason, and the cancer was identified. And in Ms. Blackman's case, it also was kind of found somewhat incidentally. But I always tell folks with Ms. Blackman's diagnosis, she had a type of cancer that it's kind of the equivalent of hitting the lung cancer jackpot. It's one of the less aggressive forms of cancer, but it tends to occur in pretty bad spots that sometimes require extremely extensive surgery, and she kind of was blessed on both ends. It was a less aggressive tumor and wasn't in the absolute worst spot. And so folks like her, I tell them you either get down on your knees and thank God or go and play Powerball or do both. So those were the most striking things with each of them, with both of them.
What is your recommendation for cancer prevention, early diagnosis, and treatment?
Well, with respect to lung cancer, 90% of all lung cancer is from cigarette smoking. In the 1800s, when cigarettes were pretty much non-existent, lung cancer was non-existent. It wasn't until the 1900s when, with the proliferation of cigarettes, that we started to see lung cancer. Affecting lung cancer in a positive way, you can do that by not smoking. Now, that does not mean that you should go out and start to vape, because we have no idea what is in the components that these vaping devices are constructed with. The other thing is, if you have a history of smoking, or maybe you have been in an environment where there are a lot of smokers, lung cancer screening, getting a CT scan. There is evidence that getting a screening CT scan does save lives. If you are age 50 to 80 and have smoked within the past, or a current smoker have smoked and quit within the past 15 years, you are eligible to undergo a screening CT scan, and I would strongly encourage you to do so.
That's great advice. And again, all of it is covered under Medicaid and Medicare and commercial, so there's absolutely no reason not to get it if you have smoked. My dad's still a smoker at 70, and I make him go every year, so, because he won't quit.
Just to reiterate what I was saying earlier, when I say you listen to people who you care about or you believe in, my youngest daughter is Dr. Ashley Doucette, and she and my wife of 48 years have been on me about changing doctors because they didn't feel as though I was getting the proper diagnosis that I needed to be having. So that's how I wound up at Oshner's. And it was God sent. I was started at Oshner's in January to 2023. And by June 15th, Dr. Pettiford was presenting surgery to me. And so I can't say enough about this hospital. And, you owe a certain responsibility to your families, to keep yourself in the best possible health that you possibly can. And my wife and I have got 48 years of marriage, so I owe her, just like she owes me, to try and take best care of yourself as you can. But my youngest is one of those determining people that's going to just determine and make me change to do what I needed to do for my own sakes. And it was only because of her that I actually changed doctors, and as a blessing, that's how I wanted it.
Well, I think that's great. And if you do feel that way, that you're not getting the best care, I think your family is the ones that should advocate for you to try to find somebody that does understand.
And I'd like to say too, I'm blessed. I have one beautiful daughter, and I know I don't look like it, but I'm getting a little older there. And she always says, "Mother, I'm in charge of you." So I'm so thankful that she's in charge of me, because she was there with me. And it's important that you talk, because sometimes she'll say, well, Mom, let's just talk about it. What's going on? I mean, let's go right now. Let's talk about it. And because she was there for me, as Dr. Pettiford said, we made this journey with God together, So I tell people, talk to your family. This morning when I walked in, I've learned so much from the panelists and the survivors. And one of the young ladies here at the church said, how can you educate, asking the moderators and other folks? But my question is, it's up to us now. What can we do? One lady said the barber shop, the beauty shop, the church, the young people, starting at home, educating. So now we're survivors, but they can't do it all. We, the community, need to go back. And I'm just grateful and excited. You can tell I don't ever stop talking. I love it.
No,
I'm
I
just
love
so
it.
alive.
I'm going to have you on one of our
You know,
commercials.
Dr. Pettiford.
It's all good.
It's all good.
And I think you're exactly right. I think if you can take your message out, I think that just gives a face to a name. And I think sometimes that we don't always, and I've been begging my dad for years to quit. And, he's one of those that he's got to die of something, and he is. So, but I do think that at the same time that we've preached it to the kids and stuff like that. So now there will be a generation that doesn't smoke, my child's generation. So I think that's great. So last questions for all of you. What is the most important take-home message that you have for the audience?
Well, for me, I think the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that we have to pay attention to the fact that there's people out here that's trying to help you, and you have to, it depends upon where that message is coming from, but if you find someone that you can believe in, and they tell you, you know, you go get screening or you need to have this checked or that checked, take that advice seriously. You know, I heard something earlier today, and my hat's off to all physicians, because there's such a shortage of doctors, and that's a lot of stress on you guys. I understand that, but because of that, the better we take care of ourselves, the less stress we putting us. Kind of like what's happening in the criminal justice system with the courts. They're overwhelmed. You doctors are overwhelmed. I understand that. So we actually have to do a better job on our part to give you guys a hand.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree, because there's a lot of stress. But one of the things I want to say is, you know, stop self-diagnosing. You know, if there's something going on that's a little different, here again, don't wait until, you know, it's too late. You know, get it checked. They all know me now at Oxnard. You know, the least little thing happens, they all know me, I'm calling. And then the next thing is educate, educate, educate. Oftentimes we think, oh, I can't give. You know, there's always an annual give date for cancer, or an annual give date for other causes. And we sometimes feel that our little does not matter. But whatever we can do to give back in education or funding, you may not have 10,000, but you may have 20 or 50 or 100 to give back to research, so that we can end up really finding out ways to further educate and help others.
I think that's great. Dr. Pettiford?
Yes, lung cancer has historically been an extremely challenging disease to identify and cure. And I think we're at a relative renaissance period with the advent of lung cancer screening programs, smoking cessation programs. I think there's going to be a renaissance, and we will maybe see some advances similar to what we've seen with respect to survivorship that we've seen with breast cancer. So that is extremely encouraging to me. And when you couple that with the advance of technologies such as robotics, we also are going to see extremely phenomenal outcomes with respect to complications related to surgery as well as recovery. And I want to kind of shift gears in closing and commend patients like Ms. Blackman and Mr. Doucette and their families. It takes a lot of courage to come to an office and talk with a stranger and open up to that individual and basically go to the operating room and not know what's going to happen. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. And it makes me have one of the highest levels of respect for individuals who are willing to do so. So I want to thank you.
Thanks go to you guys.
Thank you. Love you.
Big time.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome.
Yes. And then closing, you know, just to kind of capture everything, it sounds like the message is, 1, don't self-diagnose. 2, family support is extremely important when you're going through some of these events. And 3, find a really great doctor that you believe in and you trust in, because that does make all the difference when you really feel connected to that physician. For me, last thing would be, vaping is not an alternative that you should be doing. So if your kids are vaping or anything, we do have presentations at Oshner that we can do in the schools and let them know what is going on. It is not a cessation tool. No one quits on vaping. And then the other things that we worry about that is that a lot of people vape and smoke. And once you do that, your chances of heart disease and stroke go up about 80%. So you really want to choose one, is what I say. Don't do both. And then just know that Oshner is supporting free smoking cessation and the free lung cancer screenings, so that way we can make sure that nobody has to suffer alone, and that we can catch, if you do get cancer, we can catch it as early as possible. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Ebony Price-Haywood. Q&A. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about that. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
So it was just wonderful, of course, going in with my mother, as you stated, not knowing what to expect. But there was a dry erase board. He drew a diagram. He let me know exactly what was going to occur. And so I felt comfortable in knowing that I understood what was the process. what would happen during the surgery, what we would expect after. And so I want to thank you because a lot of times when you go in with physicians, they speak a language that we do not understand. But I was able, being a visual learner, to know exactly what you were going to do, how you were going to go in, how you were going to do it. And so that allowed me to feel comfortable. That allowed me to be exact in what I was praying and asking God to do, to guide your hands as you did what you told me you were going to do. I was specific, and I felt comfortable in knowing that things were going to be well with my mother, that she was in good hands with someone that I trusted. So I just want to thank you and encourage you to keep being a blessing. I know this is your profession, but it's your ministry. I don't know if you are aware of that in the way that you touch people and how you help. I'm an only child, and to think about, to hear this, and then we went immediately to your office, it was reassuring. So thank you, and may God continue to bless you.
The Pettifor does this drawing to explain to you in detail on how the procedure is going to go. And it made sense to me what he was saying, but immediately I looked to my daughter because she was sitting in the room with us, and she didn't have that look of fear on her face after he explained what he was going to be doing. And when she felt comfortable with him, that made me feel a whole lot better, a whole lot.
There's a book, I think some of you guys may have read it a few times. There's a phrase in it that says, do unto others. And I'm quite sure you can fill in the rest of it. But that is my approach when I'm speaking with patients and their family members. I imagine how would I feel if I were sitting in that chair as the patient or sitting next to my wife, mother, father, or child. And so that is my approach. It doesn't matter who you are, what station in life you're in, that is my approach consistently.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Don't say it.
You don't want mine.
All right. Well, I'm going to close out for you guys, but don't forget, we're going to do one more raffle. So I have 2 Pelican tickets to give away. I'm going to call off a ticket number. You have to be in the room to get it. I don't know if the folks out in the hall can hear me. If I don't pull a number and go through this whole entire thing, we're just going to throw it to whoever catches it. So, all right. So I just pulled a number. Look at your red tickets. 194-1053. Anyone? Nope. I'm going to read it one more time. 194-1053. Nobody. All right, let's go to the next. Let's try 194-1151. 194-1151. Nope. I'm about to just toss it out and hope somebody catch it. Let me try again. All right. 194-1142. All right, this ain't gonna work. So let me ask you a question. I want you to guess out loud. I have a number in my head between 1 and 20. Whoever is closest to it, you get the tickets. 13. All right, thank you. All right, so for those if you're still online, just to close out a few words to the group, I appreciate all of our panelists who came today. I think we saw that there were similar stories across all of our panel speakers, all of our survivors. The most important thing I want you to take away from this is that cancer is not a death sentence. It's something that we can survive. The important thing is for us to know our family history and to share our history with our family members. The other lesson learned today is the importance of not diagnosing yourself, going to having a primary care doctor or a physician to diagnose you, and also having your family involved in your journey along the way in order to strengthen you and help you through this journey. All of us who are here today, I will say my favorite scripture is put on the armor of God. We are all given a purpose. There are things that happen in our life that we don't know why they happen, but there is a purpose. And my purpose was to bring you all here today to share stories of the survivors, to empower our community and know that we can survive and we deserve to survive. And part of that starts with the knowledge piece. So I thank you for attending today's session. I hope that you walk away with much more knowledge and empowerment than when you first walked in the door. But we are here for you. We believe in you. We are a part of the community, and we will survive. Thank you.